I was listening to what Tom was saying about the technique he uses of adding water and lifting the grain. I come across this about 7 years ago. There was a demonstration by a local guy, and apparently it's a Japanese technique. And I was interested in it at the time, and then it's one of them things that you sort of listen to and then move on and do something else. Last month, I'd been asked to do a demonstration for a local club of mine. So I decided that this might be quite a good idea to do. But anybody that wants to do a demonstration, the last thing you want to hear is, I'm going to show you something that I've never done before. So what I did was I spent 2 or 3 weeks just having a play and a bit of practice. And I could kick myself tonight because I've had a run around the workshop, but I'm sure all of the sample pieces that I did, I have put on the fire. So never throw anything away that you've turned or you've had a go at. Go back to it. But I have found 2 pieces that I did on the demonstration that night. It's done slightly differently. It's when you bash the timber and then you cut away the excess and re-raise what was bashed. And I'll show you just on these 2 balls that I did on the night, and hopefully you might be able to see on the camera. But you can see here, these are all raised.
Right.
And they're bubbling effect. So what you're doing is you're actually knocking into the wood, bashing into the timber, and then putting it onto the lathe and turning off the excess timber until there is no marks. And then you put it over steam, and the steam instantly draws out the marks. What I did is I practiced with lots of different things, bashing the wood with hammers, bashing the wood with different spikes, different metals, screwdriver ends. If the spike is too sharp, it splits the timber. What you're looking for is something that's quite nice and rounded. And I ended up turning myself 2 pieces of blackwood at different dimensions and just giving it a nice round end and then bashing that in. But I think with a lot more playing around, you would get a very, very different effect on a bowl. It is certainly something that's very tactile to touch. And it really does raise the grain back up. So it's not carved. It's difficult to show you on the camera, but there is no carving in this. So you could put dots all the way around the bowl or just in a section of the bowl. These were just sort of demonstration pieces to show people, and all that's done is just held over a kettle.
It's very obvious that it's raised, Martin.
Yeah, it is very obvious.
You can see it.
But
that's a great idea.
It's a great technique and it's good fun. What I will say is, I tried on oak, and what happens is the bubbles that I wanted kind of elongated. They almost went like eggs. The steam traveled down the grain. I tried it on ash, and it traveled down the grain also. It elongated them bubbles that I was trying to create. Sycamore, beech, sapele were all really good results. So if you are wanting to do that technique, use quite a tight grained wood. It doesn't work as well on your open grain timbers. But it's a great thing to do and a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun over 4 or 5 days, producing a lot of different textures. And I think if you added the raised texture to a carved texture, it would achieve something very different on a ball edge. So that was what I wanted to touch on quickly, on what Tom was saying. I have also been turning this week.
Hey, Martin, with the denting technique, what about something like a nail punch?
That's very nice, Martin. It's pretty.
Or maybe a screwdriver.
Screwdriver didn't work for me. At the club, lots of the guys started talking about leather punches and that kind of thing, could you actually raise the grain of a letter or a number? My answer to that question is don't know, because I've never tried it. I think it might be too small. The dent that you're making in, I think it might be too small to raise back up. So it wants to be quite large. What I did do with one of mine was I drilled a hole in a square blank. Then I turned the blank round and curved it slightly at the end. And then I bashed that onto the wood. And that did give me a complete circle. It gave me a ring on the actual ball. So there is a lot of things that you can try, and certainly I had 74 people at my local club demonstration, and the amount of people that have said, I'm going to go and try this, and I've said, come back to me, let me know what you're doing, because it saves me the job. So if you are going to try this, let's see your results. Hit it with a hammer. If you're not a wood turner, you can be a wood basher.
So you put it in steam, Martin? You steamed it in a bucket or something?
No, what I did is basically with these, when you're bashing them, I turn them differently, because when you're bashing them, you want stability. So what I did is I put it up against my chuck. I turned myself a chucking point in the square blank. That's where I stopped. I now put it down onto the floor. No, I didn't. I put it into the chuck, and I just trued up the edge, just so that this was flat. I then took it off the lathe, put it on the floor, and I bashed these dents into it wherever I wanted them in it, where I knew my outside edge was going to be.
But you need that supporting wood, right? In order to, so you don't
square supporting wood, otherwise you'd get bounce. So I've got a square blank. I've bashed it all. I've put it back into the lathe, and now what I do is I cut it off until I can't see any of the dents. If you look very closely, you can kind of see a little mark. You can see roughly where they are, but hardly anything. It's almost clean. Then what I did is I just put it over the top of the kettle. Okay. So when the kettle was boiling and the steam was coming out, you could probably put a pan of boiling water on the stove, get the steam, pop it on the top. It doesn't need to be on there. Yeah. Put it on there for a few minutes, lift it up, and you'll see that the bumples will start to come back. You can keep adding it, but I didn't find any benefit leaving it on there longer. So once you're happy with what it is, you can then put it back into the chuck. I'd sanded this beforehand, and now what I did was put it back up to the chuck, turn the back side of the ball off down, created my new chucking point, and then turned it round, put it into the chuck, and finished the ball off at the front. So you are turning it backwards and forwards a bit. It is a different way of turning a ball to what most of you will have thought about, but the results are fairly good. What
made you want to do that, Martin? What inspired you?
I saw a demonstration many years ago on it, and I found it very interesting because it's not carving. It's kind of the opposite to carving. What you're doing is you're asking the wood to come back to where it was.
Yeah.
And you're taking away the wood. And to somebody who doesn't understand what you've done, it's an effect on a bowl that they would think you would take hours to create, because to try and all them little balls, you wouldn't, you would really struggle.
It's anti-carving.
Was your wood green or was it kiln dried, Martin?
No, it was kiln dried. It was dry.
Okay.
And Martin, it was side grain and not end grain, correct?
That's another very good question. It does work, but not as well on end grain. The side grain is far better for it. So try and stick to your side grains on your bowls as well. I did do one that might be still by the fire.
Because you're breaking the grain. You're fracturing the grain. Fascinating.
No, just the opposite. You're denting the grain and not fracturing it.
Right.
If you cut the grain, it's not gonna pop back.
Don't know if that's showing anything, but this
Ah.
one,
Yeah, I can see it.
yeah, this one has not been raised yet. This hasn't been over the kettle, and so you can see where I've cut it back,
Right.
and you can just see them tiny little dents. But I did about 13 or 14 little tiny pieces like this, just to see if it was going to work. Just test pieces to see whether what woods would lift and what woods wouldn't lift. I might have another piece of oak somewhere. I've been having a bit of a tidy up in my workshop, so unfortunately a lot went on the fire pile. No, I thought I had an oak one somewhere. So I can't show you the oak one, which is the elongated one. Really annoying. I just didn't think that conversation with the steaming or the wet would ever come up, but it has tonight. Well done, Tom.
Thank you.
Well, the elongated ones could have an interesting effect, though.
Yes. Yeah. I think there's, like I say, there's an awful lot that you can do that would create the different shapes and the different textures. Somebody said, can I use a bar? Can I use like a tool and bash the tool into it to give me lines? And again, my answer was, yes, you can. Try it and let me know what the results are, because I've never done it. There was only so much I could do in a couple of week period, trying different things.
Right.
But yeah, certainly, if you're going to have a go, somebody sent me a picture today, and they've done one, and what a lovely result that they've ended up with. I'll see if I can find it in my conversations quickly.
Your call has been forwarded to an auto.
Do you have to sand it, or can you sand it?
Can you see that?
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
Like it.
So they've had some lovely results with the balls on there.
Right. That's pretty.